Was the LAPD covering up for David when 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez's body was first discovered in the front trunk of his vehicle? Many believe this was definitely the case. It's no secret that David and his orbit have connections to the LAPD, which explains why he had never been arrested in the past, even when many on his Discord server claimed to have had reported him to law enforcement for dating underage girls, and yet nothing had happened. And even after Celeste had been found by the police in Hollywood in January of 2024, when she was returned to her family in Lake Elsinore, and yet we have no information of what the police learned from Celeste, of where and with whom she had been with during that time. We also have no information as to why David had not been investigated after she went missing again for the last time on February 14 of 2024. Hello and welcome to JungleStream. Join me as we go over what many believe to be the LAPD cover-up into the Celeste Rivas Hernandez death. It appeared for many months that the LAPD was doing everything in its power to protect David Anthony Burke, from not interrogating him to making it clear to the media from the very start that he was not being considered a suspect or a person of interest even, which was mind-boggling, seeing that an underage girl that was well known to have been in a relationship with him for several years had been found dead and dismembered in his vehicle's front trunk. But that was still no reason for David to modify his plans even. I mean, he was still performing in Minnesota the day when her body was discovered. No one would have received that first-class treatment had they not been David Anthony Burke. These are my thoughts and speculations that are based on his previous posts, videos and interviews, and what the LAPD inner sources as well as private investigator Steve Fisher and online sleuths have revealed from their own investigations. Please hit subscribe, and if you like my content, hit like as well. I'd appreciate it. Do add your thoughts in the comments section on YouTube. I'd love to know what you think. If you're listening on the podcast platforms, please subscribe there. So let's get started. Of course, for legal reasons, I have to mention that while we are doing our best to verify that all the information in text, group chats, live stream chats and videos, and photographs are real, we cannot confirm with 100% certainty that all is authentic and none has been altered or manufactured, because we have no tangible evidence from law enforcement to corroborate at this time. But I will say that in my opinion, it looks real and authentic. There has been a lot of breaking news that is very specific, important, and relevant. The public has been very touched by this story, and we seek justice and truth for Celeste. It's everyone's will that won't allow for this case to be swept under the rug. All we had gotten was silence from the LAPD for almost 2 months before any movement happened. Well, that is if we can believe what sources from the LAPD and medical examiner's office have shared with media outlets, from news stations to newspapers to entertainment magazines and channels, because the LAPD has not had the time to have a formal press conference regarding this case. Many of us believe that powerful people are involved that want this case under hush, and this is why the LAPD appear to have no plans to hold anyone accountable from day one. It came as no surprise to us when we learned that David and his family, as well as his work contacts, have strong connections with law enforcement. The more we look into this case, the more we find it hard to believe that the LAPD's investigators and evidence response team was not actively stifling and preventing discovery in this crime. And let us not forget District Attorney Nathan HOCHMAN'S nonchalant declaration with no sense of any urgency on November 19th of 2025, where he stated, "The police have not presented the case to our office, so at this point, I don't anticipate one way or another whether or not charges will be filed." As if we were speaking of a candy bar being stolen from a local grocery store. We are talking about a dismembered child. I mean, let's pretend for 1 minute that the dismembered part and her being found in a trunk was not part of this equation. Details about Celeste and David's relationship have been out in the open for years. Those who wanted to look into it could have done so. The patterns are powerful enough to demand that an investigation be opened immediately into his fascination for underage girls. It just takes spending a few hours online and going through his different social media accounts to see what was well known for years by his fans, followers, and inner circle. The allegations, assumptions, and rumors, all his digital footprints have been there all along. It's absolutely appalling. Would Nathan HOCHMAN have been so carefree about finding anyone accountable if it would have been his daughter or the daughter of one of his friends who had been preyed on, groomed, and abused and disposed of in the manner that Celeste was? There was a pattern in David's post to the point that even his fans and followers commented that he was a pedo and only added young girls to his group chats. Again, we are not detectives, but even we have found a map of David's predatory ways. Young girls have been exposing him by sharing the messages he sent to them, where he said that he would want them to travel with him if they were in a relationship. All this information is out in the open for all to see. It's not hidden. David's obsession with wanting to be liked and famous and viewed by millions will ultimately be his downfall, for he himself documented and shared his crimes. He mapped everything about his life, his proximity to young girls, his relationships with them, and even photographed and recorded them with him. He was not hiding his pattern of circling the girls and being with them. He made no excuses and was even defiant when someone on his Discord server asked him December 13 of 2023 at 1:09 a.m. "Hey, who's that girl?" In the live stream, a girl who looked very much like Celeste was in the background covering her face. David replied, "You are a fed." He appeared very brave behind his screen. We can see why when you have the district attorney Nathan HOCHMAN'S stating that there was nothing to be looked into while already knowing all of this, because David has made it known for years who he is and what he's been doing with young girls. The system was protecting this abuser, and yet people were still questioning why the family of Celeste would not go to law enforcement to report him if they knew. It's easy to understand where the public's outrage is coming from. This outrage, I believe, is what made something happen behind closed doors, and I think it's safe to say that others stepped in to look into the red flags that were screaming cover up by the LAPD and the district attorney's office. Private investigator Steve Fisher shared valuable information that made us all question why the LAPD had not only been dragging its feet in this case for almost 2 months, but why they had also left behind critical pieces of evidence when the Hollywood Hills mansion had been raided on September 17th of 2025. This is very important, seeing that their detailed work is what ensures the integrity of evidence, which is crucial for building cases and achieving convictions. It's their job to comb through information that at a glance may not appear to mean anything. The fact that Fisher physically took evidence to the LAPD that he deemed to be important, spoke volumes as to what these LAPD investigators and evidence response team had been doing from the very beginning of this case. The mansion in the Hollywood Hills was rented the day that Celeste had been reported missing. It was rented by Interscope executive Josh Marshall, who let David live there with Celeste and David's friends. Celeste was around David's family, friends, and management at the Fonda shows in Los Angeles for starters on June 27th and June 28th of 2024. The question is if Interscope had a hand in all the LAPD chaos, and if they had wanted it to be silently handled. This could be why David has not been questioned. It comes as no surprise to learn that David's father's law firm is representing Jeffrey Epstein's estate. David definitely has the most experienced people on this topic on his side and in his camp. A lot of fingers point to the 20-year-old for obvious reasons, like the fact that her world operated in the shadows, in the whispers, and in fears because of him. David should have been the obvious suspect when he chose to be in a relationship with a minor and documented over and over again, everywhere in social media. We've now learned from private investigator Steve Fisher on December 16, 2025 at 11:13 a.m. when he posted on his Twitter account for SF Investigates that one of the things that he had spoken of over 2 months ago that he had found at the home after the LAPD had already raided the mansion on September 18th and what they had chosen to leave behind was a new and still boxed burn cage incinerator, the Dr. Burn Cage. Why did the LAPD choose to leave this behind? Why didn't the LAPD find this item to be important enough for them to take into custody immediately? The circumstances surrounding this relationship, along with the pattern of David's interest for gore, it just takes a few minutes to look him up to see that his sick and demented interests were always in his videos, from his obsession for Celeste and the violence in his music and videos, not to mention that she was found dead and dismembered in his vehicle. They should have slapped the handcuffs on him immediately, for all roads had already led straight to him. It is information like this about the burn cage incinerator and chainsaw discovery that leads so many, including myself, to believe that the LAPD at first was planning to sweep this case under the rug. Why did they not arrest David immediately after seeing this in the home? The LAPD knew what Steve Fisher did not, which was that Celeste's limbs had been detached and cut into pieces. They knew this and did not find it suspect that a large incinerator had been found at the home where the individual in which Celeste's body was found dismembered in his front trunk lived. In my opinion, the LAPD had no intention of finding David accountable for his sick relationships with minors. Yes, I said minors. He had not one but several relationships with minors. What I am saying is that those who go in and investigate and find enough evidence to then send those findings to the district attorney's office for potential charges, those individuals or their supervisors were not planning to do their jobs and were intentionally trying to protect David. Why did we not hear of an arrest years ago when Celeste was first found alive in Hollywood when she was returned home by police officers? Why? Because David and his sick monsters that enabled and protected him used their influence and contacts and made it all disappear. Had law enforcement done the right thing then, Celeste would be alive. From the very beginning, this relationship between Celeste and David needed more digging and much more discussion. Lucky for us, David and Celeste shared almost everything online, in their social media. I say lucky because we've been able to trace their steps because the LAPD had certainly not taken this case seriously. A child that was groomed and found dismembered in the car of her rumored lover, and the district attorney's office has the boldness to state that there was no case forwarded to them regarding Celeste Rivas Hernandez, and there was no reason for them to take immediate action? I'm paraphrasing, but that was pretty much the main point. We're not professional detectives, but even we see what is clear, and David had a lot to do with Celeste Rivas Hernandez, relationship-wise, death-related, and in disposing of her remains. Let's not forget that TMZ said during their first reportings that when everything comes out, it'll be seen that something very simple happened. It was as if these reports were already setting up the narrative that David was innocent. Let us not forget that Harvey from TMZ is good friends with David's attorney. They are good enough friends where they vacation together. Had it not been for private investigator Steve Fisher going into that mansion thanks to the owner, Mladen Trifunovic, and thanks to the medical examiner's office public statements, this case could have possibly already been closed and David would be in the clear. The medical examiner's report continuously kept getting pushed back as new information was revealed. Requests to make the findings private, which the medical examiner's office had rejected until the judge ordered it after the LAPD requested it through the courts. You could hear the frustration in the medical examiner's office statements provided. On November 24, 2025, the County of Los Angeles Medical Examiner Office posted on its website, at 10:54 a.m. on Friday, November 21, 2025, the County of Los Angeles Department of Medical Examiner received a court order initiated by the Los Angeles Police Department to place a security hold on medical examiner case number 2025-14252, Celeste Rivas Hernandez. No records or details associated with this case, including the cause and manner of death and medical examiner report, can be released or posted on the website until further notice. Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Ode Ukpo stated on the website, "The department's mission is to have full transparency with the community by providing information about our cases to empower people to make changes that save lives. Since becoming the department head, I've worked on eradicating the practice of placing security holds on medical examiner cases simply by law enforcement request. The practice of security holds is virtually unheard of in other counties and has not been proven to improve outcomes in the legal system. We are dedicated to serving our community with full transparency. However, the law precludes us from doing so while the court order remains in this case." The department previously received a request for a security hold from the LAPD on this case on September 15, 2025, which was denied due to insufficient justification to warrant the hold. The department understands the public's interest in this case and remains committed to transparency when possible. Information will be made available once the court order is lifted. For questions about the court order, timeline, and law enforcement investigation into this death, you can contact the LAPD. Everything that the district attorney, Beth Silverman, is now having to do with secret grand juries and still David is not arrested after 4 months is because of all the obstacles that her own LAPD set in place to protect him. She is cleaning up their mess. He has been treated with kitty gloves from day one to the point where we are headed into month 5, and he is free, having just celebrated Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year, a free little man with his family, while Celeste's family has the pain of knowing that this monster took their little girl, abused her, and disposed of her when he no longer wanted her, and the law still protects him. David is at the front of the chain for many reasons. He's been named a suspect according to the LAPD and medical examiner's office sources. 2. He had a relationship with Celeste. 3. She was underage. 4. Her dismembered body was found in his car. 5. He decided to put his 2 homes in his mother's name, days after Celeste's body was found in his vehicle. 6. He was never cooperative from the beginning. 7. He has been in other relationships with underage girls. 8. Suspicious purchases like a burn cage and chainsaw were ordered under different names. 9. David made a questionable midnight road trip to a remote area in Santa Barbara County in the spring of 2025. And we can go on and on and on with all that we've discovered, and we are not the professional detectives. Well, not including Steve Fisher. As I mentioned earlier, if it wouldn't have been for Steve Fisher and the medical examiner's office pushing the LAPD to make statements and clarifications, this case would already have disappeared. In my opinion, it's been clear as day that David was guilty of not one crime, but many. There is even a video that we've recently uncovered from a Twitch livestream where David is with Asia. She looks shocked at first, then smiles, and seems fine with what she's seen, which is not only disturbing, but disgusting. It shows who she is as a human being. In this video, David is sharing his screen with the public, and he is excitedly watching 2 little girls sitting on a bed. They're probably 10, maybe 11 years old, and he is rejoicing and making enthusiastic and animated faces and sexual noises as if he cannot contain himself, and he even uttered, "I'm a gooner, I'm a gooner, I'm a gooner." If you're not familiar with what gooning means, I'll explain. Gooning refers to a state of intense, prolonged sexual arousal and self-pleasuring, often involving edging and watching porn, but switch the C for a P. A gooner is a person who engages in this activity. Any detective doing their job would have already come across this video long before we did, and would have known that David was preying on other young girls, and yet after 4 months, we are now heading into 5 months, and that predator is still free, enjoying his life. Someone needs to make this make sense. We can hear the frustration in Steve Fisher's message on his Twitter account, SF Investigates, on October 31st, 2025. One can argue that everything was beginning to sink in all of us, that the LAPD was not only being very secretive, but seemed to be more concerned that David would not be mentioned in relation to this case. Fisher posted on the Twitter account, "Celeste was only 13 years old at this time. She had been a teenager for just 6 months. Let that sink in. She had just become a teenager. An adult male groomed her. And I sincerely hope that the LAPD and the district attorney's office do not let this slide, as has happened in far too many of my other cases." It was as if Fisher was seeing where the case was heading and was ringing the alarm bells. He became more vocal soon after, calling out the LAPD for not doing anything and looking the other way to the SA at 2 months since Celeste's body had been found, and there still appeared to be no urgency in the investigation when he stated on his Twitter SF Investigates account, "It's been 2 months since the autopsy of Celeste Rivas Hernandez, and nobody has been charged. Just as disturbing, the only press release issued by the LAPD suggested that the sole potential criminal culpability might be concealment of a body. The entire reason Celeste ended up in that Tesla trunk, regardless of the manner of death, is because of the illegal, predatory relationship that David was having with her. Celeste is no longer here to testify, but circumstantial evidence is still evidence, and there is a mountain of it. If the LAPD and the district attorney's office fail to charge of the sex crimes against a minor in this case, it will be a true slap in the face to Celeste. She wasn't protected." On November 10th, 2025, Fisher stated on SF Investigates, "She was lured out of school and allowed to live that lifestyle. Predators who exploit their fame and money to target children are an especially sick breed, and to not prosecute the sex crimes that I am confident 100% occurred by David would be a huge injustice. It's time to move forward with charges. Additional charges can always be added later. Make an arrest. Steve Fisher knew more than we did, and he was clearly frustrated that the LAPD was doing what appeared to be nothing for the first few months, except declaring all over the place that David was not a suspect and was not a person of interest. It was only after Fisher's interviews that we started to see any movement in this case. Since Celeste's death, David had been partying with his group of friends, Neo, Asia, and the second Celeste, Celeste Herrera, and he even spent time with his family in Texas. That is, up until Celeste's body was discovered. It's scary to think that he possesses some ability to walk away from all of this unscathed. It certainly seemed that way when after 2 months the LAPD stated that there was no reason for them to believe there was a homicide and that no case had been sent to the district attorney's office. Especially since at those 2 months and David still had not been taken in for questioning. Well, we can now add another 2 months to the timeline, and David is free, and there is no official announcement naming him a suspect or person of interest even. All we have are just a few insider sources' comments here and there. It seems as though David has 2 legal defense teams, one with the woman who defends people like Harvey Weinstein and Mel Gibson and Kanye West, and the other team in the LAPD who's done everything in their power since day one to keep David's name away from the spotlight. So let's go back in time and remember what's led to why so many believe that the LAPD was doing its best to cover up David's crimes. The public was first outraged as the LAPD stated on November 7th, 2025, according to TMZ, that they didn't see a homicide and there was nothing new in the case. This is when the alarm bells were going off, and we questioned if they had any intention to find anything. The district attorney started to get involved as Steve Fisher began to disclose what he had found and why he found it necessary to speak up, since he was seeing no action and no effort even in piecing together the crimes committed against a 14-year-old missing girl. The public and online investigators and the community expressed their discontent in the LAPD. And just a few days later, on the 18th of November of 2025, an LAPD source with direct inner knowledge of the case spoke to news and entertainment gossip outlets and gave us hope that this will not be another cold case. It was at this time that law enforcement said that the investigation was still going on and no one was being discarded as a suspect. The public's refusal to forget this tragic event and the pressure placed on the LAPD may have helped make this happen. From the start of this investigation, we've been questioning why David's presence at the LAPD had never been required. Instead, he was cooperating from afar and in the privacy of his comfortable life, is what his defense said to the media. We've recently received contradicting information, however. An LAPD inner source on November 18th detailed to several news and entertainment gossip outlets that David had not been cooperating from the very beginning. Why then would the LAPD not force an investigation, seeing that a minor that was well documented to have been in a relationship with him was found dismembered in his vehicle? Was this really just a poor decision, perhaps influenced by very powerful people in the entertainment industry, or was this strategic to not force him to go into the LAPD to be interrogated? That is the question. While new revelations come out about David, we have accusations and very interesting testimonies, and yet David has still not been charged for anything. It's clear that the predator pedo has been protected for far too long. As we try to tackle the mountains of digital information that David was so proud to share, which has made us all believers that David was involved in a lot more than what the LAPD had hinted at from day one. Just imagine all the data that the LAPD detectives are still going through, all that we don't have access to. And yet they're still silent and have not made any formal announcement about the predator groomer. All his movements are right there, along with the allegations. In these last few months, thanks to Steve Fisher, the Reddit and online investigators, and those from David's orbit who are doing the right thing and coming forward to expose him, like his ex Kira, David is watching years of silence crumble as his secrets that were never supposed to see the day of light are being exposed for the world to see. I will end on these last 2 messages from the LAPD in regards to the Celeste Rivas Hernandez case. Pay extra attention to the fact that these individuals choose to address particular statements from the media, but choose to not reference the one person that they should be mentioning every time that this case is brought up, which is David Anthony Burke as the criminal, predator, groomer, abuser, and life-ending monster that he is, says it all. Instead, he is brought up in an almost nonchalant manner. On November 24th, 2025, Captain Scott Williams, commanding officer of the Robbery Homicide Division at the Los Angeles Police Department, stated, "Celeste's body was not frozen. She was not decapitated. The whole frozen thing doesn't even make sense. Her body was in the car for weeks. Even if she had been frozen solid when she was put in the car, which there is no evidence to suggest she was, 5 or more weeks in the trunk of a car in the sweltering heat in the middle of summer would not have resulted in a partially frozen body being discovered on September 8th, 2025. Then, on November 25th, 2025, the LAPD Robbery Homicide Division put out a statement. The Los Angeles Police Department is aware of recent stories posted by various media outlets about the David Celeste Rivas investigation and would like to dispel some misinformation contained in their reporting. The body of Celeste Rivas was not frozen when it was discovered on September 8th, 2025. She had not been decapitated. We have evidence that David traveled to the Santa Barbara area sometime during the spring of 2025. The reason for this trip is still under investigation, and we've drawn no conclusions at this point about the relevance of that trip to this case. As far as the court order, the LAPD sought to seal the records of the Los Angeles Medical Examiner's investigation into Celeste Rivas' death. That order was sought only to ensure detectives from Robbery Homicide Division learned of important information surrounding her death before the media and public. The order was not sought to undermine transparency. No other information will be provided at this time. They chose to try to explain why this case, after only 1 week from coming to light, merited secrecy, and they addressed the statement from Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Ode Ukpo, after he had ousted the Los Angeles Police Department for informally requesting to put a security hold on the findings in Celeste's case, which had been denied on September 15th, 2025, due to insufficient justification to warrant the hold. The LAPD requested a security hold days from when Celeste's dismembered body was found in David Anthony Burke's vehicle. When their request was denied, the LAPD then quickly moved through the courts and were granted the security hold. Please do hit the like and share if you've enjoyed this content. Share your thoughts below in the comments section. What do you think of the LAPD's handling of this case since day one? Do you have faith in District Attorney Beth Silverman?